I'm just going to fill you in on all of the projects I plan to do today. The first and middle difficulty of the 3 projects I'm doing is a creeper farm. I'm doing a basic design that's quite popular, and if I'm ever unsure of anything, I'll be referencing Chapman's tutorial for the farm. That'll be linked in the description. The second and easiest farm on my list is an Enderman farm. The original designer of this farm is more or less lost to history, and I can build it from memory anyway. The last is an iron farm, for which I'll be directly following a tutorial from They6, which will also be linked in the description. I immediately started chopping wood. I need a handful of chests and a fuck ton of trapdoors for this farm. I also crafted myself 3 shulker boxes, with which I can store all of the items needed for all of these farms. Well, I think I'll need more than 3 shulkers for the iron farm, but you get the picture. I then started furiously attacking salmon with a woodcutting axe, what is this, Florida? And began exploring with an unwise amount of fireworks. I was searching for cats to power my industrial blood factory, and I had to start running through woods in search of a village. I was also casually searching for sheep. I need a decent bit of carpet. During the night, I scrounged up some gunpowder and paper, and I tamed 1 cat outside of this village, and got more fireworks before sleeping the night away. I also accidentally turned on the narrator, which is a great accessibility feature and fucking terrifying when it starts talking to you out of nowhere when you accidentally turn it on. I tamed a cat who was sitting on this hill all cool-like, and the other cat was stuck on the roof of a villager house. How does this even happen? Taking any animal that teleports like this over long distance with an elytra is annoying. Sometimes you go far enough that they decide they can't actually teleport. Also here I made a rather reckless move and was on half health. Not a huge deal. Back at the village, I bred the cats, which was the first time I had bred any 2 animals. I also found another calico in the desert, as well as a tuxedo cat down the river, though I needed to hunt more fish to tame him. With a small family of cats, I waited. I need to wait more for some of the cats to grow up and some of the others to be ready to breed again. After breeding the first 2 cats I got once again, I started right-clicking the tuxedo guy until he would pop up with hearts. After this, I figured I could do more productive things with my cat breeding downtime, so I decided to get more wood for trapdoors. I still need a lot of those. Here, while looking at this weird terrain gen, I got the idea for what I would be doing next episode, though you'll have to wait and see what that is. I terraformed it a little, because it's kind of an eyesore, before killing creepers in the night. But all of that stopped when I found another cat by the riverbank. This is important. I really didn't need to travel to find cats. I could have just waited for some to spawn in the desert village. I kept running out of fish while trying to tame the cat, and while hunting for more, he got away. This is what I get for trying to buy people's love with fish. Here, I kept a small supply of sand on me, so every time a creeper exploded, I would take a brief break from gunpowder hunting to fill in creeper holes. Then a creeper exploded right as I found that cat from earlier, and I got the cat first because he was vastly more important. I then slashed a creeper, and an enderman got caught in the crossfire. I really don't like the way endermen teleport when they're on fire. I think it has a drawback to a good enchantment, but in an inconsistent and uncouth way. Then I bred quite a few cats. It speeds up once you get a few breeding pairs, and I counted and recounted, and I had 7 or 8 cats, I'm not sure, which means I need some amount more. In the meantime, I did more logging. I aim to build 6 layers of this farm, and each layer requires 2 stacks of trapdoors. 2 stacks of trapdoors costing nearly 400 planks. Looking back at this gameplay, there's a pretty big jungle on the other side of the ocean, so I probably could have just annihilated some trees over there and gotten what I needed in about a day in-game. I also started properly grouping all of the villagers' workstations. I'm going to move them all somewhere else eventually, and trust me, those working conditions will be worse. Every time I craft fireworks, I'm reminded of how glorious life with a creeper farm will be. I did also get some more green glass and install a window in the attic here like I said I would in the last episode. Also, I added a window to the hallway, which looked too big at first and also kind of at second, but I didn't change it in the moment, and I believe it's still like that to this day. I then went creeper hunting. It was destructive and harrowing as always, but I did get a decent gunpowder haul, on top of already having a small stockpile of fireworks, which should cover me until the creeper farm is up and running. While creeper farming, I found this little patch of land which is nice and flat, which should be perfect for this farm. Also, I'm going to put this out there now. The rain messes with the bitrate of the video at basically every stage, recording, editing, YouTube compression, etc. So, would you rather have rain occasionally soiling the video, or have rain off, which looks a bit weird, but should vastly improve the quality? During the day, I sprinted through the plains sharing sheep, and ended up in this village, which I might have done a raid at. I don't know which video that's in. Getting so far ahead on these videos has made footage a nightmare, so I get the chronology wrong from time to time. At home, I returned to logging, though these should be some of the last trees. I already have around 10 stacks of trapdoors. And now I have all 12. With these soul campfires, yes, I had soul soil on hand, I'm pretty much done gathering all of the little odds and ends that this farm demands. I have just over 4 stacks of fireworks now, so I can travel to the ends of the earth. More or less. I decided to go easy on myself for this farm and use sandstone. I need, a lot. Watching back this footage, I think of my love of mining sandstone and how this is a terrible way to do it. For instance, I needed quite a large amount of sand for a project which will be in episode 4. And for a subsequent project, I needed quite a few shulkers of sandstone. And for that, I took the area I had cleared of sand and dug out a portion of the sandstone, and that was absolutely incredible. I love gathering sandstone like that so much, but here I'm doing it underground, which sucks. I just filled a shulker with sandstone. I'm not sure about the exact amount I need, but this should be well over enough. Here I flew back over that patch of land I had noticed previously and began clearing out a spot to put my farm. So I know how to build this farm off the top of my head, kinda. And I know that it's this kind of shape on each side, but here I made it 6 blocks on one side and 5 blocks on the other. I'm like 70% sure it's supposed to be 5, and I tested to make sure the carpet pattern works, but only on the one side where it does work, because I'm a fool. Because the farm uses a layer structure and has these corner bits here, it hurts me on a deep and ancestral level to see me not notice the discrepancy between each side of the farm, even when it stares me in the face. Here I literally checked only the left half of the farm, but soon I did notice there's a problem here when I tried to place carpet on the other side of the farm. I'm really just lucky I noticed this one on the first couple of floors, because it was a pretty quick fix, and I could reach most of the blocks I needed to from the ground. Also, I got the Sniper Duel achievement. I don't intend to do all achievements, especially post 1.19, I simply cannot be bothered. Layer 3, I realized I mined basically an entire shulker extra of sandstone, but I might use sandstone for the iron farm, depending on if it fits the surrounding area of my spawn. Keep in mind, at this point I hadn't even started writing episode 1, and it had been several months since I started this world, so I didn't really remember what my spawn looked like. I realized I could build the entire layer, trapdoors, cats, carpets, etc. as I go, and it may be a little less arduous if I'm switching up what I'm doing, but I'm this far in, I might as well commit to doing it the worst way. After finishing up the structure of the farm, I torched it up so I can temporarily mob-proof it while I put the cats in and stuff. Though really, I should have put torches in there while I was building the structure. I should have 12 of these cats, but if they keep getting stuck in the villager houses, maybe I'll have 11. Getting the felines into the first layer was incredibly easy. I just need to cut a little hole in the wall and they follow me. I should probably say I've already built one of these with 8 floors in my 1000 Days world, and if I need more gunpowder than this can provide, I'll add more floors. This is a relatively primitive farm, and the average person using it will only need 1 or 2 layers, but it's nice that you can go up to like 50 if you really want. Oh, by the way, I am still alive in the 1000 Days world. It's just on the back burner, and the flame is off, and the stove is broken. Basically, that world's only coming back if you want to see me make content that isn't the fast-paced gimmick content I made a series out of for some reason. Much like with the previous rant, I kind of forgot what I was doing and started digging out a killing floor, which I don't believe is actually built the way the tutorial recommends, but I know how to do this, and lava is annoying. After connecting hoppers to 2 double chests, which was definitely not enough, I was more or less done with the killing floor and could get back to cat business. I don't know why I built this weird ridge around the thing. I could have just built a straight tower and built a ridge around that so that I could get off at any floor, but what's done is done. While trying to move this cat, it got stuck on my bed because cats are just as evil in Minecraft as in real life. After placing the final feline, I began placing trapdoors, and I really should have done this while I was getting the cats in. I know that I'm placing trapdoors in different directions. It does not matter. They function the same, and if all goes according to plan, I will never have to look at these again. Despite doing it in complete darkness without a totem most of the time, I was never in any real danger here. There were a few light level 1 and 2 blocks here, and I had to mess around with the ceiling of the killing floor, and it eventually went away. But that could have resulted in a drastic 1% decrease in rates. Here I noticed that I missed 1 trapdoor. I checked in the world, and it's not missing anymore, but I couldn't find the clip where I fixed it. I went back to the house to grab some torches and glass, and lit up a small area around the farm. I then grabbed 2 stacks of blocks and towered way up, just high enough to not despawn the creepers that are on the killing platform. I built a small glass platform here, but I couldn't safely jump into the ocean from it, so I built a runway. After building this runway, I took the jump, and I landed safely in the water, but with only about 7 or 8 blocks of clearance, so I decided to add a little more onto the runway and make it 4 blocks wide. Just while building that, the farm gave me 76 gunpowder, which means if I AFK for a few hours, I should have enough gunpowder to last me till the end of time. After 5 minutes or so of AFKing, I saw that a whole bunch of mobs had spawned on the ground, and that will slow the rates, so I took a few minutes to expand my torched area. Torch gritting is a process that always makes me feel like I'm losing my mind. I then flew back up to AFK after, according to the file dating system thing, about an hour. I was at my house and didn't record checking how much gunpowder I got. I then immediately went to the Nether and destroyed my only portal. Technically there is that one portal like 2,000 blocks away, but that doesn't count. After that, I began raiding a bastion I already raided. I believe I was looking for a flint and steel, which I forgot to get when I broke my portal. After not being able to find one in the nearby fortress either, I dug a tunnel just beneath the ceiling bedrock. I'm using this to be able to quickly go from the desert to the end, because now we're officially onto the Enderman farm. The first tunnel I dug was an exit into the open nether, which for some reason I made several hundred blocks away from my desert portal. Also, check out my pickaxe durability. That's why I need an Enderman farm. I'm not sure why I didn't clearly mark the nether hold, because I know that's going to cause problems later. Because it is later, and it has caused problems. After this, I went down into the nether, where I had iron and flint at my disposal, and was able to craft a flint and steel, which means I can now get the fuck out of here. I then looked at the deep slate in my chests, and thought about my Enderman farm, and I realized what I must do, but I do not know if I have the slate to do it. Also, I flew by this ocean monument and got mining fatigue. I originally wrote a joke about colonizing it in revenge for fatiguing me, but then I realized that's not even the monument I colonized. I was flying in search of my stronghold, but when I found it, I immediately went through the portal, which was not what I came here to do. I had already gathered obsidian and was planning to build a portal there, so I jumped through the return portal and flew right back over the ocean. I did my portal 3x3 in this bit of the wall, which is the only correct way to do it. The other side of the portal actually looked a lot like my first nether spawn. I mean, it actually opened up into a lava lake, but that's whatever. Here I got attacked by a piglin while already on slightly low health, and if he got a good combo, that definitely could have been a totem pop. Luckily, he was slow as shit and I eviscerated him. I realize we're in the Enderman farm chapter of the video and I haven't even begun gathering resources, but this is essential infrastructure if I intend to actually use it. Also, I could really stall the Enderman farm and build iceboat highways, but my not caring ends when it starts losing me retention. The way I would do this is that I would dig charter tunnels to make sure that my portals are where I think they are, and often the actual tunnel takes an entirely different route than the charter. Also, I realize I'll have to expand these to 3x3 eventually, and probably do ice boats, but both of those will be vastly easier to do once the Enderman farm is done. The way I built my desert portal makes it look like it's just a little stop on the road rather than a destination, which I might change, but on the other hand, I don't really intend to use it for much more than villager trades later on. After digging out my tunnel to the end, I decided to go end raiding, pretty much strictly for shulker shells. I have around 10 stacks of fireworks, so I should be able to get at least enough shulkers for regular ender chest use from this raiding session. A secondary mission for this trip is also to get another elytra. If I'm deep in the grind for a project, I don't want to have to go over to the end every time my elytra runs out. I swapped my Silk Touch pickaxe into my offhand. I'm quite desperate for any XP I can get to repair it. The first end city I found netted me 17 shulker shells, an elytra, and no good gear. From there I could see another, and I did get a little greedy and let myself get to low health here. Still with no totem equipped. After raiding that in another small city, I had only netted an additional 4 shulker shells. From there I flew out to another large city. You may notice that with my extended render distance, I get as low as 30 FPS sometimes. If you think you can tell the difference, you can't. I record and upload in 25 FPS. Here I got to half health once again with 3 shulker projectiles on me. They add up pretty fast. I left this one with 29 shulker shells, which still doesn't feel like that many. In the following end city, I stopped collecting the ender chests for some reason, even though I will never have enough of those. Also, I finally put my fireworks in a shulker because there's no way I'll use all of those before I return home. Speaking of returning home, I did with 30 shulker shells, which won't be enough for some larger projects, but it'll be enough to fill my ender chest. When I went through the portal, I looked into this cave and totally on a whim decided to explore the rest of the ancient city I found at the start of episode 1. I then noticed the Warden Heartbeat subtitle, which meant that somehow the Warden I spawned all of those days ago had not despawned yet. I typically use the portal structure in the center as a sort of home base, so I just have to know where that is, and even if I spawn the Warden, I can fly over there. And on top of that, I can shoot the Warden with my bow and it can't hit me. The first chest I looted had next to nothing, but as I crouched across the floor of the city, looking for the next one, I saw the Warden Digs subtitle, meaning he's despawned. I took quite a gamble on this chest here without thoroughly checking my surroundings. Luckily, it didn't trigger a shrieker. Trigger a shrieker? More like trigger a liberal. My ex-wife is pressing charges. Next I saw these 2 chests and a shrieker next to them, and I decided to just take the L on that one and trigger the shrieker a few blocks away. Here too, there were 4 shriekers and I just went for it. Upon opening the chest, I saw 64 amethyst shards I had dumped in there. Yeah, I looted that chest back at the start of the world. I triggered another trigger with this, and to be honest, I probably shouldn't have been exploring the city at all, but I don't remember a single one of the things I got out of the second round of exploration. I should have left after I triggered the third trigger. I found some diamonds in the floor, not even in a chest, looted a few more Swift Sneak 3 books, which I would be shocked if I ever had a use for, and here I flew by a pylon, and it triggered the final trigger summoning the warden. This was my cue to leave, but for some reason I kept exploring another avenue of the city and spawned another warden before finally flying out of the big cave. Here I was thinking, why don't I just take my Iron Farm portal back home while I was writing? And then I remembered that the Iron Farm portal doesn't exist yet, because the Iron Farm doesn't exist yet. I was getting pretty severe lag on the trip home, and I realized my render distance was still on 32 chunks from the end. And it barely got any better after turning it down. I wouldn't notice for a while, but this is because I had the dedicated RAM for my game at 2 gigabytes, which is the default. Suggestion for Mojang, maybe scale the default amount of RAM to the amount available on your computer. I get some people have cheap laptops and may only have 4 gigabytes available or whatever, but I have 16 gigabytes and usually have 6 dedicated to Minecraft. I shouldn't need to change JVM arguments in order to have a playable experience. By the way, if you're having similar lag spikes, go to the Installations tab in the Minecraft launcher, edit the installation you're playing on, and select More Options, and under JVM arguments, change XMX2G to XMX whatever you want G. Also, for technical reasons, performance won't get much better after 6 gigabytes. This is a public service announcement. Allocate your RAM. It will make your game run so much better. Anyway, after AFKing my creeper farm a little, my recording picks up in the nether, making a portal to spawn for my iron farm, even though I'm not actually doing that yet. I was still getting lag because I just did not think about changing the setting I've known about for years. I don't really remember wanting to stall making the Enderman farm, though it's possible I wanted to clear out my to-do list before continuing with the build. While diving into this cave to get some iron, I hit F3 and finally realized my RAM is on 2 gigs. There shouldn't be any lag like that going forward. I needed iron for hoppers, and I entered a mineshaft in the deep slate section of this cave, which means more stalling and almost definitely no progress. I get next to nothing from this mineshaft, purely a waste of time. I got a little bit of iron, but there was much more in the surrounding caves than in the mineshaft itself. Also, I ran out of torches at one point and started using a flint and steel to light my path. I found one spot here where it went into the bedrock, and all of the bedrock was cut off by the mineshaft, which, unless it's hard-coded to do otherwise, tells me it may be possible for a mineshaft to cut right through the bedrock and all the way to the void. In one of my old non-YouTube worlds, I played on the 1.17 snapshots, where they were still trying to fit most of the stuff in 1.17, 1.18, 1.19, and parts of 1.20 into one update. In some of these snapshots, they didn't have the feature, which ended up being really well implemented, where existing worlds would have their underground expand down to -64, and the existing bedrock layer would be replaced with deep slate. And so -64 was generated according to the game, but there was nothing there, and I had 64 blocks under my main world where I could just fly around. While I'm a little mad I never did anything with that space, I'm much happier that they fixed generation. Anyway, after my flint and steel broke, I kept exploring for some reason. I'm not even collecting deep slate, which I also need, and I already have enough iron for the farm. I got a few diamonds, but not enough to justify this. Diamonds are barely used for anything at this point in the game. After stopping my recording, and I think actually starting it up the next time I played, rather than missing like an hour of gameplay, I started mining deep slate. I got a little bit of gold and diamonds. Those are useless. I need deep slate. I occasionally found caves and had to force myself to continue strip mining so I can collect deep slate. I shouldn't actually need that much of it, not much more than a shulker, but I'm probably going to use deep slate for something in the future, so I'm going to mine some excess. When deciding to go down a different tunnel in my strip mine, I decided to fly down the mine, which is a terrible idea and you should never do it, though I was unharmed. I then found a mine shaft. God damn it. I had nearly 20 stacks of deep slate, which depending on the size of the platform may already be enough, but I really should just focus on the task at hand. Here though, I found an enchanted golden apple, so at least I didn't totally waste my time with the shaft. I then found absolutely nothing and went home. I actually had 38 diamonds, which was nice, but I can get them way faster by doing proper cave dives with an elytra. I took some of the gold I got from mining and crafted more golden apples. I left a bunch of shit that I needed at home, including the trapdoors for the drop chute and the name tag for the endermite. But after a little more preparation, I was ready to actually build the farm, so I hopped dimensions and arrived in my spawn because I took the wrong portal. In previous worlds, I've built my first enderman farm on the far side of the island so that I can build a bigger one on the near side, but I plan for this to be my only enderman farm because I'm going to be building a much more efficient XP farm sometime around episode 8 or 9. Also, I would like to build an Enderman farm on the island so that I can spawn withers and get wither roses from an Enderman farm, but the current end project I have in mind doesn't really allow for that without an extraordinary amount of spawn proofing work, which would probably end up totally ruining the project. I checked my coords and built a bridge for the base of the island to X237. I figured here that I would build a little boring square room, but I built the initial platform at Y1, which was too low to build an ender pearl disposal system. This also reminded me that I need to build a disposal system. This is actually quite easy. I need 2 observers, a dropper, a sticky piston, and a lever. I jumped around collecting all of the funny little resources I need for the disposal system. And also, I lied about this because it was funnier for the punchline, but I don't actually have enough iron, so I quickly mined up a stack from the nearby cave. This was more than I needed, but I'll need more hoppers for the iron farm anyway. I then forgot why I even got the stuff for a disposal system and started building a circle, still at Y1. I then started building a second circle a block above, which should give me the extra block I need to build the disposal system, and after building that second layer, I realized it kinda looked cool having the bottom layer, so I might keep it. Maybe. I plan to place water all over this platform later, and it may look cleaner with the bottom platform totally gone after I flood it. I then realized that the circle was made out of top slabs, not bottom slabs, and for some reason, I built a second base circle at Y1. At that point, it would have been simpler just to build one circle. I built a 3x3 square in the center for a killing floor, and I deeply enjoyed filling in the platform. I placed hoppers in a way that they should dispose of ender pearls as fast as possible, but in order to place the central hopper, I needed to first place the dropper, which is a scary and horrible experience. I flew under the circle and put fireworks in my offhand before flying up onto this block and waiting to fall helplessly into the void. I repeated the same ritual to place a temporary block from which to build the observer clock. Also, for a second, I placed the observer wrong, and if I didn't have slabs, I probably would have had to dive into the void to get it. Luckily, I found another way to get the piston for the on and off switch down. Side note, I barely used the on and off switch. That thing was so unnecessary. I carpeted the killing floor and placed a circle above it. I towered to Y42, which will leave the Enderman 1 hit from death. I built these 1 slab thick rings 2.5 blocks apart. Here I got attacked by an Enderman and got down to 6 hearts. That's barely worth a mention. Once I finished the drop shoot rings, I built a 35 by 35 frame for the spawning platform and divided it into quarters. This makes the psychological challenge of placing slabs for 10 minutes significantly easier. This process was actually rather easy. After placing the final blocks of the spawning platform, I decided to build my enchanting setup. I don't recall writing about getting that enchanting setup, but I don't want to check if I wrote about it because I'd rather be blissfully ignorant of the extra work I may have to do. Because I won't do it anyway because I'm too lazy. And I've made the joke about being too lazy in this series enough times that you're realizing it's not a joke now. I decided to flood this 1 layer instead of building a room and flooding the top. For whatever reason, I began by using 2 buckets. I had iron back at the base, and I don't know why I didn't just go back and craft more buckets. Well, I did, but that's not the point. I returned to the end with 7 buckets and an unwise fall. Luckily, I have the best possible armor in the game. I can never get anything better. Imagine I'm saying this with a wink. I'm really glad these should be enough buckets. I really hate going back to the overworld. Good thing I have everything I will ever need for this farm and will definitely not have to go back. I began filling in the platform bucket by bucket, minute by minute, hour by hour. Time ticks on, and I spend my waking life working on these sidetracks, these videos, with no greater purpose in sight. I agonize over any mistake left unfixed in a previously published work, though I act with little care to prevent them in the future. Each brief moment of fulfillment serves only to tide me over until the next project. That great unbridled fulfillment always so near, yet never within my grasp. After flooding everywhere, including the roof above my enchanting setup, I placed a chest and stowed my items. Note I say items instead of valuables, that's because they're not valuable. I destroyed my infinite water source along with the bridge to the Enderman farm. I'm pretty much going to be wearing an elytra 100% of the time I'm out here anyway. Destroying the last block of any structure that's built in the void is always terrifying. I need some ender pearls for the next step in this process, and I whacked an enderman who disappeared. Even with fire aspect that shouldn't have killed him, I don't know where he is. With a chestplate and a totem, enderman killing is hardly dangerous. I was on 6 hearts at one point, but that's just because I forgot to heal. Returning to the enderman farm after getting ender pearls, I landed like this, which I love doing, but I am slightly concerned by the size of the platform and the risk of sliding right off of it if I overshoot by a few blocks. I then realized I had no name tag, and a name tag is necessary to prevent the endermite from despawning. Also, I got more trapdoors because I couldn't find the ones I left in the overworld earlier. I named the endermite Sebastian, in case you were wondering. It actually does not mean anything. It's just what I thought of. I returned to the end, nearly died in my nether tunnels, nearly died throwing ender pearls, and didn't even get a mite. I hunted for more pearls on the spawning platform, which sucks. I don't want to put my chestplate on because fuck that, but also I take a shit ton of damage with my elytra. With 9 pearls to spare, the mite was spawned, and I name tagged him before getting him in the cart, which is vital. You cannot name an endermite that's already in a minecart. After destroying the little barrier protecting the endermite, the enderman immediately started funneling in. In case you aren't aware, endermen hate endermites, and no matter if death awaits them, they will chase them to the end of the earth. I flew down, and the farm was working perfectly, and I enthusiastically began repairing my pickaxe, and after killing a few rounds of endermen, they seemed to dry up. I flew up to get a better look, and young Sebastian had been murdered. I really don't know what happened. I made plenty of enderman farms before, and 3 blocks had always been enough for them. I actually played a little in my 1000 Days world around this time, and the mite had died in that world too with my pre-existing enderman farm, so maybe they changed the way enderman reach works. Anyway, I got a name tag for Zachary, my second endermite to be. Also, to be 100% crystal, this is the last step of the farm. If it didn't break, I would already be onto the iron farm. After ethically farming 16 more ender pearls, I built a second cage in which to spawn Zachary, this one 4 blocks off of the ground. Of course, the first 16 ender pearls did not yield the small beast which I seek, and the next stack proved no less of a waste. And despite my best efforts, after 50 ender pearls, I had nothing. Lord, give me strength. On my second to last ender pearl of my 4th stack, Zachary was summoned, and hopefully the endermite won't immediately die this time. I placed a slab over his head, which might do something, I don't know. And some of the endermen de-aggroed near the hole, which worried me, but the endermite is still alive. It just seems the block he's on is blocking their view. This shouldn't be an issue. When new endermen spawn, they should push the de-aggroed ones in. After this, the farm is officially done, and I can take a minute to repair all of my tools. Also, I saw the major flaw in my disposal system, which is the speed at which hoppers function. You may ask why I didn't use a hopper minecart, which is a relatively simple way to make a more functional disposal system. And it's because those things scare me, man. I can barely wrap my head around hoppers, let alone throwing them into a minecart. Back at home, I contemplated how I'm now 2/3 of the way through this video, and that kind of scared me. It's once again coming to a close on this project, and I feel... Nah, I'm not going to go on another rant like I did before. To be clear, everything I said in that was actually how I feel, and I think at times dancing between projects in the way I do can be quite draining and lack long-term fulfillment. Also, I'm more like halfway through because this last farm is huge. While contemplating, I stared into this chest for like 15 minutes before crafting 2 pairs of diamond boots. I want to finally get Depth Strider, as especially in this water and working with infinite water sources, Frostwalker can be quite inconvenient. Actually, the first level 30 boot enchant I got gave me Protection 4, Unbreaking 3, and Depth Strider 3, meaning I just need Feather Falling 4 and Mending, and I will be out of this bitch. I could really use a dedicated Enderman sword with no looting, especially with my broke-ass disposal system. Here I actually got a Depth Strider 3 book to test a theory I have, and yeah, that doesn't just overwrite the Frostwalker 2. Even though I think other enchantments work that way, and it really should work that way with Frostwalker and Depth Strider, but whatever. At this point, I grinded off my netherite boots. Really, those other Protection 4 ones I got are useless unless I want to spend another netherite ingot upgrading them, or be a gross poor person with diamond boots. I really only needed Prot 4 and Unbreaking 3, which with this farm was no problem. I already had Feather Falling and Depth Strider books, so once I had that, it was easy. After this, I went home and returned to the village right as the sun was rising, and holy shit, I typed rising instead of rising into the script. That's hilarious. And after that, I had a few chores I didn't record, one being an ender sword. After crafting it, I felt it necessary to get to 100 levels just to break in the new farm. Also, to be clear, the farm still gets overloaded with ender pearls, it's just not quite as bad. Anyway, now I'm at level 100, which feels kind of weird. This officially marks the end of the Enderman farm portion of this video, and last, and inarguably most, is the Iron farm. As I said previously, I'm following Day 6's tutorial, and first on the agenda, much like with the Creeper farm, is to chop wood. This time I shouldn't need quite as much. While villagers play a large and cumbersome role in this farm, it's not so much about trades, and these logs specifically are being mined for fence gates. After gathering all of the necessary fence gates, I went cave diving, an incredibly fun process. Here my own Elytraflight made me fear while reviewing footage, though I do always find that it's scarier to watch Elytraflight than to do Elytraflight. Apparently this was the first time I had silk-touched deep slate iron. That's weird. I was mainly here for iron, so of course I started searching at a level which literally cannot spawn iron. I found a few diamonds here though, so it's fine. I got entangled in some cobwebs near a cave spider spawner. This could be quite treacherous if I wasn't an immensely skilled Minecrafter. I just broke the spawner. For this farm, I only technically need 45 iron for 9 hoppers. However, I intend to use rail transport for the villagers and possibly the zombies. Here I found a skeleton spawner that was devoid of loot, barring one name tag, and I didn't even take it. I was so upset. I happened upon a dripstone cave that was at Y0, which should have much more iron. I probably need around 3 or 4 stacks of raw iron all in all. You get 16 rails out of 6 iron, and I'll need like a lot of rails. Here I was already missing 3 hearts and fell down this cave. That very well could have been a totem if I had fallen onto dripstone. I still didn't have too much iron when I left, barely enough for the hoppers. I tossed the iron into the inferno and waited a few minutes before crafting myself 9 hoppers, though actually I'll definitely need more hoppers and chests, unless I want to travel to this farm every couple of hours in order to prevent the storage from overflowing. I did have the necessary glass for the project at hand. I assume it was from trading excess emeralds for glass purely for XP back in episode 1. I also got a bucket of lava for the first time ever, and grabbed some ladders, even though I'm almost certain those are used to access storage, and I'm going to use a staircase for that. I also went out into the nether and flew into the nearby Soul Sand Valley. I'm going to use soul campfires, which might have been in the tutorial. I can't check right now because I DDoSed someone, and Spectrum cut the internet access to my house. To be 100% clear, that is a joke. I would never use Spectrum. Anyway, the tutorial might have either soul campfires or regular campfires. I built the campfires, and to be honest, this whole resource grind, I was just thinking about how much I don't want to do this build. For context, I started playing Minecraft Hardcore in late 2019, and until like mid-2021, I had not built a single iron farm. I had built plenty of Enderman farms and the like, but I was always intimidated by iron farms. In one world, I made the snap decision to build an iron farm, and I was shocked by how good and how easy it was. In a way, I felt sort of mad that I had been missing out on it. And it's one of my favorite stories from my Minecraft career, and it reflects one of my deepest flaws. I feel consumed by agonizing dread with anything relating to new experiences. Not even because I think they'll go poorly, but rather because I feel a deep need for every day of my life to be this same status quo. Without external influence, I'm so controlled by this need for familiarity that anytime I'm offered to even briefly exit my comfort zone, I will deny it. Time and again. Anyway, since I've already built the farm in real life, I can confirm that I was totally right and this sucks. I started mining more sandstone, and this requires more blocks than even the creeper farm. So if I had to make it out of a block that I couldn't insta-mine, we'd be here all day. After mining up a shulker of sandstone, which didn't take that long, I flew home, and while flying just near it, I paused the game, and proceeded to record my paused game for 40 minutes. Returning to the game, I was exploring a mineshaft. I don't remember finding anything, but I might have. You'll never know. I went cave diving nearby, and this cave is just a few hundred blocks from the village. I didn't bring any torches into the cave because I'm pretty much out of coal. I'll probably do a separate coal mining trip in some stone level caves anyway. Here I noticed a creeper hole and decided to mine up some sand. These creeper holes will be few and far between since I'm not killing creepers manually for gunpowder anymore, so I'm just going to fill up the existing ones now. By the way, I crafted up all of the rails and I had 2.5 stacks. That's a lot of rails. That'll totally be enough. I then got distracted and just started placing the rails anyway, and I barely got past my house before I ran out. So yeah, I'm mining again. It's weird how I was low on fireworks while building the gunpowder farm, and then all of my tools were low on durability while building the Enderman farm, and now I need so much iron for the iron farm. Here I had my elytra on, and a creeper dropped right next to my head, which, were it a few blocks closer, would have resulted in an instant totem pop. I also mined some desperately needed coal, though I should search for more once I have the time. When I was back at my house, I started filling up creeper holes. This should vastly improve the look of the landscape. I crafted another batch of rails and hoped they would get me at least to the nether portal, and they didn't. Okay, after a lot more mining, I had crafted some more rails, and this creeper nearly destroyed my home. Trust me, we'll get to the farm eventually. I took this unemployed homeless person off the street, and I'll subject him to horrific experiments. I make the laws, and I say it's legal. I also encourage the villagers to help me procure another human. Getting a villager in a minecart is a little annoying, but just pushing against their minecart generates enough momentum for them to move pretty fast. I dropped both villagers off of the nether portal, broke one's minecart, pushed him through, and repeated with the other. I was briefly panicked, attempting to prevent them from going back into the nether portal, but luckily I got them both into minecarts. Once they were in, I looked at the ground and held right-click, And that didn't work because for some reason it kept skipping some blocks, but once I had the tracks laid, I quite easily moved both villagers. Especially on a flat tunnel, it's very easy. With both villagers at the portal, I went through to make sure they didn't immediately run away, and I was at my end portal. I would get this confused so many times in the future, though usually I accidentally went to spawn when I was trying to go to the end. These rails aren't too bad to mine up as long as you keep your mouse straight and at the right angle to avoid breaking netherrack. I then realized I broke the rails leading to the end portal, which I'll need anyway because I still need to take them back through the end portal tunnel to get them to the iron farm. Anyway, I railed my way to the iron farm and needed even more rails to finish between the end portal. I'm talking a lot about railing and finishing in this video. Maybe I should cut some of this out. Anyway, after building a little cage in the portal to temporarily contain the villagers, I took them into the overworld at night. It didn't end up being a big deal, but I really should have slept immediately. I began placing rails after sleeping the night away, and Swift Sneak fucks up my bridging, which is annoying, but I can somewhat get a rhythm with it. In case it wasn't obvious, I intend to breed the villagers, with each other, you freak, and keep forcing them to procreate until I have the 24 I need. With my bridge built, I got sidetracked and decided to clear out all of the trees. If you don't know, it's important to build iron farms in a flat area or on a peak, because iron golems will spawn wherever they can. Also, it's day 150, that's cool. I definitely went a little overboard on destroying trees. I basically spent the entire next day chopping. I did get quite a lot of birch, though. After taking down 1 million trees, I decided to finally build the rail track. I'm gonna build a little hobbit hole in the side of the mountain, and let the villagers copulate in there. I tried to land on my bed, and it didn't work. I brought an inventory full of beds to the villager hole, and placed a weird layout of 24 beds. Pushing villagers up a 45-degree angle rail is generally absolutely miserable, but this first one was fine. And the second one was also fine. Returning to spawn portal, I realized I don't have my ender chest, and I'm out of both fireworks and golden carrots, and I broke my nether portal to prevent the villagers from going back into it, and I don't have a flint and steel. So I had to go underground to mine coal and iron so I could get home. Though while I was in the nether, I did take the opportunity to mine up the rails from earlier, as I was going to be running through my tunnels anyway. I was on very low food back at home, too, and I didn't check my fireworks shulker. I assume it's empty. And here I realized that I really need a better sugarcane farm. Don't worry, I'll make one in like, 3 months. Also, I went to the end for literally no reason. Though I did spawn in the overworld at my iron farm, so I guess I saved time. Just don't think about it too hard, that'll mess up your brain. I then realized I needed something, I think shulker boxes, and went back to the end to go end raiding. A nice bonus of this is that I get ender chests from some of the rooms, and following my recent firework drama, a few more of those would be nice to have on hand. Honestly, writing now, I'm pretty sure the whole point of this trip was for ender chests, and any elytra or shulkers were a byproduct. I was never in too much danger while exploring, so I'll just fast forward a little. Besides, this video is dragging on for me writing it, and I'm sure it's worse for you watching it. I got a few pieces of diamond gear, some diamonds, and 5 ender chests. A productive journey. Also, I got back to the end island the scary way. That's some 700 blocks of uninterrupted void. Honestly, I don't have a stockpile of blaze rods, so crafting ender chests would require me to go to the end, mine away at the towers for obsidian, get some ender pearls, then go to the nether and collect blaze rods in order to craft them up, so this is quicker and just as dangerous, and comes with bonus diamonds and elytra. Honestly, actually starting the iron farm scared me. I had the YouTube video paused on the resource list for hours while I stalled building the thing. This was partially because it was a big scary farm, and partially because I fucking hate YouTube tutorials. No hate to this one, it's pretty standard and more watchable than some, but god I hate Minecraft YouTube tutorials so much. I collected some bread from the villagers in the desert, and now I can finally start the final step before I start building the farm. Though I may start building without all 24 villagers bred up. I then threw some bread at the villagers, and these exhibitionist slags started sucking and fucking right before my eyes as if it was no big deal. You know how I said I may start building before I have all of the villagers? Well, I have exactly 1/8 of the required number of villagers, and I'm gonna start building. Also, here's a reminder now, and this will bite me in the ass later, always keep your villagers mob-proof, or just sleep at night so that they don't get infected. The farm starts with digging a 2-deep square about, this big. In case you could tell, this is not a viable alternative to the original tutorial. I barely know what I'm doing. You may think that digging shapes in the ground is actually pretty easy, but if you were there for Fake Season 3, you know that I'm very bad at digging shapes in the ground. And also counting to 10. I'm bad at that too. That confusion back with the Iron Farm in Fake Season 3 was not an isolated incident. Though this one I figured out my mistake quite fast. I'm supposed to dig a 5x5 hole in the center. I surrounded that hole in sandstone stairs and trapdoors before wettening the ridge here. This is similar to flooding the Enderman farm, only water behaves normally here because I didn't decide to do waterlogged slabs like a crazy person. I went round and round, bucket after bucket, and mercilessly killed this innocent chicken. Wow, I am a monster. A killing floor is ordinarily a pretty easy part of any Minecraft farm, but I'm an idiot and built my farm in like the most inconvenient spot possible. Honestly, I could have built it over the ocean. Spawn chunks are pretty big, and there's ocean right there. Really, I don't think the depth of the killing floor matters as long as the golems don't escape, but I counted it out precisely anyway. The farm then required me to dig the full 3x3 hole before digging another 3x3 hole in the wall. It says to use a ladder as an exit, but I'm gonna opt for stairs. It's just so much nicer. I placed 3 double chests, which I briefly mentioned earlier, but it's a pet peeve of mine when farms say they need an unbelievably small amount of storage, and especially with something like an iron farm where it's going 24/7, kind of, as long as you're in the overworld and like actually logged into the world, it will fill up in like a few hours. After filling out the hoppers, I placed an array of signs and only got a little burnt when placing lava above them. Under this, I placed soul campfires, which kills iron golems surprisingly quickly. After digging a staircase, I checked, and the baby villager was grown up. And I still hadn't gotten the villagers to breed again, which is something I should really remember to do. The farm required I build a 6-block long platform stretching across this edge here. It's kind of funny that the tutorial basically has you build an entire quarter of the farm, and you could almost start to think it's done, and then it says to repeat that on all 4 sides. I did know about this ahead of time though, and honestly, this build seems more resource intensive than it is on the surface. It took me like 10 minutes to mine up all of the sandstone. The bigger challenge was mining iron for rails. After placing stairs alongside each one of the panels, I went back home to collect the excess sandstone from the creeper farm. There's a lot of it, and hopefully I shouldn't need it, but in the event that I do, it should be enough to build this iron farm twice over. I placed another row of stairs and a 6-block platform. Here I observed a 4th specimen in the holding chamber. Excellent. I repeated the platform on all 4 sides. A good amount of this build is just, I placed these blocks, and then I placed these blocks on all of the other sides. And that gets kind of boring. Basically, I needed to place blocks along the side of these platforms, and it was exactly that. Just repeating on all sides, adding walls, repeating that on all sides. You get the picture. The next step of the build, I had to place trapdoors in front of these stairs here. Repeating on each side, of course. And I just realized that these are fence gates, not trapdoors. The next step was flooding the platforms, which I quite enjoy. I repeated on all 4 sides and noticed that it was nighttime, so I went to sleep with the villagers, and they had contracted an illness. I sort of stood in disbelief, hoping I wouldn't need to bring more in from the village, and then I figured I'd try and cure them. For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to go to the nether. I'm not 100% sure how despawning works, but I thought if I flew out of their despawn radius, they would despawn, but not if I went into the nether and then came out of a portal that was outside of their radius. I went out into the nether just to find a handful of brown mushrooms, and while exploring, waiting for it to be night so I could get spider eyes, I decided to take another look at that woodland mansion I found in episode 1. Honestly, I found 2 totems and nothing good in the chests, and had a bit of a scary moment with some vindicators here. This place was not worth it. Being real, I didn't even free the allies. I fucking hate those guys. For some reason, I flew to spawn here, though, which would definitely despawn the zombies, even if my logic from before was correct. Anyway, I flew back through the overworld to my base, realized I totally forgot to get spider eyes, and then went to the nether for blaze rods because brewing stands need blaze powder to work. Also, I don't actually have a brewing stand in my home. I filled some bottles with valuable desert water before descending through the caves in search of arachnids, the first of which gave me an eye. The fermented spider eye isn't normally an expensive item, but it was a little side quest here. Also, if you don't know how to craft weakness potions or to cure zombie villagers, this whole part of the video is confusing the fuck out of you. Unfortunately, only one of my villagers was still there because he was holding on to some rotten flesh, which proves my theory wrong, though it actually doesn't because I despawned him anyway. After giving him some dayquil, I started building the top part of the farm, even though I wasn't actually done flooding the bottom part. I did a little bit of that building and finished the water stuff while I waited for my boy to cure. And he did, right as the sun set. It's kind of poetic because nighttime was the thing that killed him in the first place. This also means the bottom part of the farm is pretty much done. The top part is basically just a piece of soul sand with some funny little rings above it, and it's platforms either side of it to hold the villagers. After getting distracted for a while trying to do that, I saw a zombie villager and realized I could actually get all of the villagers I need without going back to the desert. I locked him in a little hole, gave him his multivitamins, and carried on building the farm. With the top layer, the much bigger challenge is getting the mobs rather than building the stuff. You need a name tag zombie and 6 villagers for each side. Yeah, this part is more repeating on all 4 sides, but it's a little more complicated because you're doing 3 things on each side, 2 of which are things you do twice on each side. While I do this, I would like to be 100% honest, and not like one of those parts where I'm being honest and then I cut to a black screen as a way to make it kind of a joke, even though I'm being serious, because I can't be open for 1 second. I always need to be able to pass it off as comedic in some way. But I've really enjoyed this world. Like, I don't know if I've had a Minecraft world I genuinely cared about since, like, Season 2, but this world has been great. And this iron farm specifically was by far the most torturous build yet. After building the top section, I went to move the villager, who should be cured by now, in with the other villager, and I immediately punched him, a great first impression. After another infant was created, I realized that the bones of this farm are done, and pretty much the only thing I can do to pass time while I wait for more villagers is capturing zombies. Luckily, that's known to be a bit of a pain in the ass, so it should at least keep me busy. My plan was to get every zombie tube ready during the day and get all 4 zombies in one night. And you already know that shit was not gonna work out. I built these little contraptions here with walls and a fence trapdoor, so the zombies will fall in. I did actually manage to get all of the traps up in time, and I had the name tags prepared ahead of time. I named them Zongus. I'm actually not sure when I named them. I spotted a zombie in whatever cardinal direction right is, and lured Zongus I to his new home. He jumped right over my trap and fell onto a railing, but I managed to fix it and capture him. The next Zongus to be literally jumped straight to his death. He fell into the water, and there was basically nothing I could have done to save him at that point. Zongus 2 was actually very smooth. Check this out. Back on the side where Zongus 1.5 would have gone, I captured another zombie. Pretty textbook. By this point, I had one more zombie, and I realized I might actually be able to get all of the zombies in one day, which I expected I wouldn't be able to. On the ground, the easiest option was to lure Zongus 4 over from the opposite side, and then I noticed Zongus 3 was gone. See, when I had captured him, I didn't actually name tag him. I just forgot. And it's unfortunate that he specifically had not picked up any of the items on the ground. This also makes the Zongus I just got Zongus 3, and Zongus 4 will take the place of the one I called Zongus 4, because judging by the other one that fell in the water, the logic is that we don't count the Zongai that are never named. Anyway, it's nearly 4 AM as I write, and I did some stuff, fed the villagers, but I'll just pick up when I'm getting more Zongos. I found this chainmail guy, captured him, and made certain I had named him. I'm sure this is the last time I will have any problems with zombies. Hey, so I'm doing the voiceover right now. I didn't have any more zombie troubles. I then watched this horrific incestuous family live their life before giving myself weakness, just for fun, and beginning to build the infrastructure to move the villagers, which is by far the worst part of this farm. The villager family was starting to have some real numbers at this point, though we were at 7 and I still need more than triple that. I say they had numbers because now they're spawning iron golems, which would be great if they spawned them, like, in the water, so they go to my killing floor. Basically, my entire gameplay for this section was just throwing bread at villagers and running outside killing any iron golems they've spawned. Honestly, the first few villagers take the longest. If I hadn't had that issue with them getting zombified, I'd probably be close to getting done with the villagers by this point. I decided now to take some of that birch I got a while ago and start trading to get more food, because outside of these 15 golden carrots in my hotbar, I'm pretty much out. It's a little weird watching this gameplay because after getting the iron farm, I pretty much exclusively traded iron with toolsmiths. You couldn't hear it because my audio wasn't recording and I didn't notice until now, but at one point, I heard a villager start taking damage and die. You can see it in the subtitles. I have no idea who that was or why they died. I bought a few golden carrots, nothing crazy, just enough to get me through the rest of this wretched farm. Also, I'm somewhere around the halfway point on villagers now. To be clear, I could breed up more villagers in the desert and import them over here, but I already tore down the infrastructure, and there really aren't that many more villagers here than they are there. I rebuilt the villager rail that I tore down here for some reason, and I think I'm just going to build this rail, and instead of building a new railway for each side, I'll just divert this to the other platforms. For whatever reason, I expected to be done with the villagers, like, at worst, a little bit after I was done building, but I wasn't very proactive with giving them breeding bread, and them getting zombified really hurt the productivity. Speaking of, at night I checked, and I needed just 5 more villagers, though a good portion of the villagers are babies and they can't go on the farm or make more villagers for me, so they're temporarily useless. Honestly, these baby villagers really shouldn't be in the workforce. They've been through so many generations of inbreeding, they'd probably destroy society. You know, if you think about it, I'm doing the world a favor by forcing them to be contained in an iron farm forever. Back at my base, I killed a raid captain. I didn't have buckets in my base, so I couldn't just fly off and find a cow. This shouldn't be an issue as long as I avoid both the desert village and the iron farm village. I did have some pretty major lag spikes while flying around looking for iron in the cliffs. I'm not sure if it was my recording or Minecraft lagging though. I mined 21 iron for some reason, even though I need 3 and will have an insanely efficient iron farm running in about 2.5 hours. After extracting some milk from a nearby bovine, I checked my villagers, and that's 24. Transporting the first man to the southern quarter of the farm, I centered him on the platform before surrounding him with beds and glass. The second man I wheeled up to the farm and realized the minecart would be stopped by the man that's already in it. For some reason, I decided to break the minecart instead of moving it and transporting him a different way. This resulted in him being stuck in the glass, and I tried pushing him into place, which didn't work, so I opted for a punch, which did the trick. The following man was slightly troubling at the start, but I tried doing the same thing I did with the second guy, but this time I actually knew what I was doing, and luckily already having 2 villagers in the hole didn't change anything. This marked the first half of the first of 4 platforms done, but when transporting the next villager, I didn't realize the rail was still anchored towards the last platform, and because both beds and glass aren't solid blocks, the minecart clipped right through them. The villager wasn't suffocating, but in trying to get him out, I broke the wrong block and freed all of the villagers I already had in there. They pushed the minecart guy into the water, but the minecart did prevent him from flowing into the lava. Another guy was somehow on a different side of the farm and seemed very determined to die, but I narrowly managed to save him. The other 2 villagers were still on a rail, and I was quickly able to capture one of them. I then couldn't find the last villager, but accidentally freed another one and just put him in with the other villager, and oh god damn it, what the fuck is wrong with you? And oh my god, why are there 3 villagers here? I killed every single one of them, I just can't be bothered with this shit. From now on, if a villager falls into the water, they're dead. The next villager got stuck in this wall because there was an iron golem. I killed the iron golem and ended up getting hit once. It was only 2 hearts, but it was a little scary. I brought him into the hole and brought the 7th villager in. I made sure the rail was good before placing some slabs here, meaning I'm officially 1/8 done with this part of the build. Moving the next villager, I was already sick of minecarts. They stop if a player is in the way, but only if that player is standing perfectly still, and it is the fucking worst. At this point, I really should have started getting the villagers breeding again to replenish the 4 who I killed. I'd like you to watch this clip. This marked a turning point for me, where I realized that this game is just total fucking bullshit and there's nothing I can do about it, so I'll just endure it. Luckily I captured him easily and was able to get the final villager for that side in quite easily. Having a quarter of the villagers in is a nice morale boost, even if it's still a little daunting that I need to do this bullshit 4 more times. The first platform of the second side wasn't nearly as annoying. I mean, it was like the regular amount of annoying compared to the hell that the last one was. I then realized that the villagers I killed actually matter. I should need 13, and I have 1, 2, definitely not 13. I gave him some bread to get him going, and took another villager in, and that makes half. I currently need 12 villagers, and I have 9. Hopefully, I should be able to breed the remaining 3 before I've moved the other 9. Moving this villager, the glass thing just didn't fucking work. Luckily, he fell onto this railing and then onto the ground rather than the water. The second time around, he went in fine. Thankfully. Unfortunately, I still don't have enough villagers, but after another round of breeding, I should be good. Here I broke the minecart, and the villager immediately walked into the water. He deserved it. The minecarts felt especially slippery now. I have no idea why. Luckily, this next villager actually went in and stayed in, and I actually got ready to start putting the villagers on the other side, before realizing that there are only 2 villagers on this platform. I was not aware at the time that there were also only 2 villagers in the other platform, too. This villager fell off of the iron farm onto the ground, and when getting him back in, I hit him with a pickaxe, which means he has to be on extremely low health. Additionally, I left a block in a bad spot, and this guy fell into the water, but the one thing I hate more than getting villagers out of water is breeding new villagers, so I did choose to rescue him. Another villager breached containment somehow, and I noticed that I was missing a villager in the last one I did. Honestly, at this point, I was so ready to be done with this build. You're probably confused just watching it. Imagine how confused I was. After capturing the first villager for the final platform, I actually bred the villagers to the last time so I could restore the missing villager, and I then tried to push this iron golem to his death, and this happened? Yeah, that definitely could have been lethal. If I just fell for a little longer, hit the ground, and then he hit me again, I would have been dead. It's very important that these final villagers make it into the farm safe. If they die, it'll be real hard to replace them. After getting the third villager into this platform, I just had to wait until the baby was an adult, and then I could put him to work too. I then started literally just AFKing and waiting for the baby villager to be ready to send off, and then I decided that that shit was boring as hell, and I'm just gonna block off the platform, and then make it normal once he's grown up. The final step in this build is to poke these holes in the glass ring around the villagers, which lets the zombie scare them, and also means that as soon as the baby is grown up, I can break the final piece of glass, and we will be done. While building it, I got 3 stacks of iron, which is actually less than I would have expected, but now it'll be working at full efficiency, so it should be making way more than that. Do you see the problem here? The issue in this build? No? Well, I don't fix it in this video, and it doesn't affect the farm, so I'm not going to tell you. I AFK'd for a while before checking on the villager and seeing him all grown up, and breaking the final piece of glass for the build. I stared at my creation for a while. It may look inefficient, but I believe I had the Optifine setting enabled, which hurts iron farm efficiency, so it'll work way better in the future. And now this project, this video, this sidetrack, is done. I thought about the time I put into this video, some 25 hours just to record. My train of thought drifted between different things, all catastrophizing the nature of this work, and eventually it caught up with itself, and it drew to mind questions of my own nature. Something I do routinely is draw to memory something bad or regrettable I did, and I always end up justifying it. To this, I internally respond, you're trying to justify what you did because you can't cope with guilt, you need to just be able to take a little bit of responsibility for once. And this opens up the next step of my internal conflict. Why should I feel bad about these things I did when I can't change them and I've grown from them? Especially things I did when I was younger in some of the most traumatic parts of my childhood. I rebut, it all comes back to justification. You need to be able to take punishment, some accountability at least, instead of hiding behind a veil of change. So easy to say, but for you, impossible to do. I then want out of it, out of this thought process as a whole. And I respond, what do you really want out of? You want out of it all. You should kill yourself. You should kill yourself. I'll be okay. I manage my thoughts well enough these days. You can too. You know that?